Okay, so this video is basically going to be a supplement to the how to lock out and phase your HEI. I've had a few questions on that, and so we're just going to jump right into it. One of the questions I have, actually two of them, we're going to tackle at the same time, says, do I need to use the lockout plate for the vacuum advance, and does the positioning of the plate matter? So for number one, yes, you do need a lockout plate for this magnetic pickup. Otherwise, it's just going to float around and do its own thing, and that's not going to be good for anyone. So we definitely need a way to lock this out. You can either use this lockout plate, one that you make or whatever, or you can use your stock vacuum canister. I'll show you how to use that. You have to modify a little bit, but it can be done. And does the positioning of it matter? Again, yes, that matters. And the reason is it helps orient where your rotor is going to point. So for instance, if you're, I don't know if you can see these points very well, if your pickup is way back there, you got to make sure these points are lined up in here, right there, right there. Otherwise, this mark is lined up with number one, by the way. If you put your rotor on there, so that lines up pretty good there. If you move this way forward, now you move, see it, it's going to move around. If you move this to match, now let's try to put the rotor on there. So now all of a sudden that doesn't line up the way it's supposed to. Whoops. Trying to do this with one hand. I'm not that talented. So yeah, the positioning absolutely matters, and yes, you do need to lock this down. So before we go any further, I'm going to lock this down. I'm going to show you what it looks like phased, and then I'll show you also what it looks like on the degree wheel. So hang tight and let me put this together. I'm going to zoom this back out. Yeah, let's just stick it together right here real quick. It is a little tricky to get in there. There you go. Trying to do this without my hands getting in front of the camera too much. Oh, jeez. Missed the hole. That's what she said. So this lockout plate has this everything phased up just right, so that the rotor is going to fire directly on the number one terminal right now. So just to show how that works, if you look in here, I don't know if we can see it right there, these points are lined up, the magnetic pickup with the reluctor, so everything is lined up exactly perfect. And when we bolt this down, this is in line with number one terminal. So we'll fire it up, put it on the timing light, verify that. Okay, let's check this out. Okay, so we'll let the frame rate catch up. But they're firing directly on number one. Now if you look down at our degree wheel, let's see if that shows up. The frame rate is kind of weird, but let's see if we can make it all work. So see how that's lined up right perfectly? Hopefully that talks out. Okay. And that will stay the same at all RPMs, the way we have it set up right now. So now then we're going to take the lockout plate off, and we'll put a vacuum canister on and see what that does. You'll notice there's no E-clips on this right now. You should put your E-clips back on here just to keep this in place. They're very tiny, so if your unit should tip over or something, then they're going to get lost. Ask me how I know that. But it's okay, I got plenty, it's not a big deal. And this is just for testing purposes only. Let's throw on, here is a vacuum canister that I modified. So if you look at these mounting holes, you usually use this one and this one from the factory. They only put 2 screws in, although there's 3 holes. So you can elongate this hole, and usually I'll cut a slit in this one. I have one of those around here. I have no idea where it is. I have so much crap in here. But this will work for our purposes. So you can elongate this, and it'll give you some adjustment forward and back. And then with this particular unit, I actually welded it in place. This is for another distributor. For some reason that's looks like it's wrong, but I'll show you how you can adjust this to make it work. There's more than one way. This is a little tricky because that's welded solid and there's not enough room. Oh, it went. Look at that. Sweet. For now we're just going to put this front screw in here. And this will show why positioning is very important. You don't want to forget your rotor because they don't run very well, I guess, or at all without your rotor. Weird. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And doing this with one hand again might be a little tricky, but let's see what we get. As you can see, you see how the rotor is firing after the terminal? And also, if we look down here, frame rate, sorry. You'll see that, well, our timer is way off now. So, if we okay, I had to reposition the camera a little bit, so you'll see how it's firing after the terminal. Now if we adjust this vacuum advance forward or backwards, you see how it moves the rotor? Forward. And right there I just ran out of adjustment. But I can push it back and forward. And also as I do that, I'll try to point this down without breaking everything. So now again, I'm going to move the vacuum canister forward and back. Sorry, the frame rate's weird. Hopefully that shows up. So I really hope that shows up. So I'm not sure if that shows up well on video or not. Just frame rate is killing me, man. This is why these videos are really hard to do. But as this thing was firing, with the rotor out of whack like it was right here, it's firing right here. And as I move the vacuum canister in or out, which is moving the magnetic pickup, it does change the timing. So when you're trying to make your adjustments with your vacuum canister, you can put a manual vacuum gauge on here. Let's say this isn't welded. You have a stock vacuum canister like this. And let's say you don't want to weld your canister, you want to use it, keep it functional for some whatever reason. I don't know why you would if you lock out your distributor, but once this is running, this is locked out, you can apply a vacuum. If you're firing after the #1 terminal, if you apply a vacuum, it will pull this, oh, sorry, it won't move far enough. It'll actually move the rotor in line where it needs to be. Wherever that is, then you can pull this out, tack weld the rod right here, like I did on this one right here, and you'll be good to go. If it's firing before this, you'll need to push this back. So at that point, you can just elongate this slot right here, so you can move it back a little bit. There's very limited adjustment with this. That's why I usually don't use it. But you can elongate that hole, put a slot right there, and you can use this right here. And then it's pointless at that point. Once it's welded and locked out, you can still run a vacuum hose if you're on the street, just so guys think you're running a regular old HEI distributor, when in fact you're not. So that's one thing you can do. Let me reposition this and we'll get to the next question. Hopefully this answered that. And hopefully the frame rate cooperated with us. We'll find out later. Hang tight. So the next question I have, I usually get asked is, why would you want to lock out a distributor, and is there any benefit? So here's my philosophy on that. If you have a stock engine, stock cam, it's just your basic grocery getter daily driver, I wouldn't lock it out. Leave it alone. Just drive it and have fun with it. If you have let's say you change the cam, you stepped it up a little bit, you've got an RV cam, a little bit of performance to it, not a lot. There again, I still wouldn't lock it out. You can go down and get a spring and weight kit, a Mr. Gasket aftermarket spring and weight kit, and use that if you like. It's not that big a deal. If you do get an aftermarket spring and weight kit, I would continue to use the factory weights and not the aftermarket weights. The aftermarket weights are really small and they're thin. They're almost too light. I don't think they function correctly. Also, you want to keep tabs. You want to check the thickness of your aftermarket weights. Mic this thickness. Some of those are so thick that on the bottom of some rotors, this cross section right here is so big that it will sit right on the weights. So when you put this on and you try to run your RPM up, you'll notice your timing doesn't move the way it's supposed to. It's because these cross hashes are basically sitting on top of your counterweights, on top of your weights, not counterweights, but your weights. Like I say, aftermarket weights sometimes come too thick, but they're always too small. So I would keep the stock weights, and then those kits will come with different springs. So I just experiment with different springs and see what fits best for you. And that is like a mild RV cam, something like that. Once you get into a larger cam, a performance cam, something that's larger, you're going to use street strip or mostly race only, well then locking out the distributor might be the best thing for you, or I just run as much initial timing as you can possibly run. So let's say your cam doesn't make very much vacuum. I mean, it's only a race car, so there's really no reason to have an advanced mechanism on here. To me, I don't want anything that can fail. So the electronic module in here I always throw away. You have a magnetic pickup, magnetic pickups. Sure, they can still fail, but that's not an electronic device like electronic control module. So it's magnet. I mean, the wires can always break, but just get new ones. And a crank trigger, anything like that works just fine. So the benefit to running a locked out distributor with a large cam is it helps with your idle issues. The idle is much better when you have more initial timing in it or advance. If you run, if you just want to run advance and you don't want to lock it out, there's a couple different ways you can go. If you're running an MSD HEI or MSD distributor, it comes with springs and bushings. So again, if you have a larger cam, you don't want to lock it out, there's two ways I'd go. If you got a street strip car with a pretty good sized cam in it, I would probably put the blue bushing in. It's a 21-degree bushing as I recall, and then 2 light blue springs. So the way that works, if you have the blue bushing, it's a 21-degree bushing. If you set your timing at, let's say, 15 degrees, that'll give you a total of 36 degrees. If you have a huge race cam, a solid roller race cam, you might want to go with the black, I think it's an 18-degree bushing. Anyway, yeah, I believe that big one, that black one was an 18-degree bushing. You set your initial 18 is 36. The problem with running the blue bushing and 2 light springs, or the black bushing, you run a heavy silver spring and a light silver spring. The problem with those is it's hard to check your initial timing, so because your advance actually comes in pretty fast. I would just set your total timing and not really worry too much about your initial timing at that point. One of the downfalls to run a locked out timing is once you're over 32 degrees, and every engine's different, I'm going to hear it, I already know, but let's say you're running 36 degrees total timing, when your engine is cold, it may crank up just fine, no problem whatsoever. As soon as the engine gets warm and you go to crank it, your starter is going to kick back and probably going to break the nose off your starter. It happens a lot. I've seen it a lot. 2 ways to cure that. Number one, if you're in a race car, most guys have a starter button with a separate ignition. You just hit the starter button, flip the ignition on once the engine gets rolling, and there you go, no problem there. Another way to do it is you can buy some kind of start retard system. The cheapest start retard system that I know is the MSD starter saver. I have that number somewhere. It's something. Hang on a second. I'll find that. Oh, MSD starter saver is an MSD 8984. That's the cheapest start retard that I'm aware of from MSD. So what we're going to do right now, let me get this cap on. I'm going to set up one more thing. I'll show you something else. Hang on a sec. Okay, another question I get. If I lock out my distributor, how do I install it in the engine? Great question. So let's say you want, you're looking for 35 degrees total timing. There's 2 ways to put your distributor in. This is probably the easiest way. So let's say you want 35 degrees total timing. Hopefully you have a balancer that's marked. If you don't, you can buy a timing tape for your balancer. You just got to measure the balancer. There's different sizes. I think there's a 6, 7, 8. I think 8 is the largest. So anyway, measure your balancer across here and get the correct timing tape. You can also do some fancy measuring and calculating, divide 360, that kind of thing, figure it out. I like to keep things simple, so I have an SFI balancer. This is a race motor anyway. So as you can see here, I got my timing set. If it will focus, well, you can see it's 35 degrees. So at 35 degrees, when you install your distributor, I always mark number 1 on the distributor, on the housing. You don't see it very well, but there it is. And this is the wrong, this is not the cap I'm using, but it'll work. And you can see that's dead ass on. So you can do that. Or let's say you don't have a balancer that's smart, you don't have a time and tape, what can you do? Well, that's easy. Just set this up to 0 how you normally would on any other car. Set your engine up right on 0. When you install your distributor, instead of having your rotor pointed this way, you're gonna have it pointed more right here. More, I call this 12 o'clock, 3, 6, 9. So I'd have it set at 6 o'clock at 0. And with either method you use, whether you use that method or crank your engine to advance and put it in this way, when you fire it up, you're probably gonna have to do some fine-tune adjustments just to get it right on, but you're gonna be pretty dang close. It should be able to start up, and you should be pretty close to where you need it to be. I hope this is clear in the video. I really hope my degree wheel marking showed up. That's another question I got, by the way, just remembered. Some people were asking about making a machine like this. I'm not a woodworker by no means. This is just stuff that I happen to have laying around because we remodeled our bathroom. So to me, 2x4s aren't for building houses. They're for making cool stuff in my garage. I don't play with wood, so whatever. At first, when I first made this machine, I grabbed a degree wheel and I had to file the center hole a little bit bigger to put a little collar in it. And then I marked it. I tried using this. This thing is pretty weighty. It's very weighty. So when you turn the system on and start spinning it, if it's out of balance whatsoever, it sits there and shakes. This thing will shake the machine apart. Plus it cuts down the RPM. I couldn't spin it very fast. It was horrible. So I ruined a really good degree wheel, but that's okay. I have more. No big deal. This right here is that corrugated lightweight stuff. And cutting a circle, I suck. I'm not a fabricator by no means, but whatever. I just put a string and a nail in there, drew me a circle, cut it out the best I could. I mean, whatever. It does what I need it to do. A friend of mine was going to make one of these. He asked me, where do I put this line? Well, you can put the line anywhere you want. Just put the line on. You need a collar to mount it to your distributor shaft. So I can run this with or without this plate, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, it's, again, draw this line wherever you want. And when you put your distributor in, it's going to move anyway. So once it's running, you just turn your distributor to line that up. And the part where this comes in real handy is when you're checking to see if your ignition is advancing or retarding, or if you want to check your advance you have built into here. I kind of calculated the little lines. I don't know if they show up very well or not, so I can tell if it's advancing or retarding. So it's not perfectly accurate, but it does let me know if it's 5 or 10 degrees off or whatever. One other tidbit, and I know for a fact this doesn't show up in the video. I just tried it. But if you look at your stock vacuum canister, I'm going to try to lay 2 of these right here so we can see. With a stock vacuum canister, on this side right down here, there's some numbers. This one, there's a little 24 right there. This is a 24 degree vacuum canister. This one is aftermarket, so the numbers go this way. And this one says 20. So this is a 20 degree vacuum canister. This is an aftermarket one. There are no markings whatsoever, so you have to just guess what that one is, but I would guess that'd be probably a 24 to 26. Here's one right here. You see the little slot up top? I'm out of fingers and hands. But right here, there's a little space. This number right here, I know again, you can't see it at all, but this says 10. This is a 10 degree can. So that's just for your information. I don't run vacuum canisters in my stuff, so on your street vehicles, definitely you want to run vacuum advance. It does help things out. Whether you want to hook it to portive vacuum or manifold vacuum is up to you. I prefer manifold, otherwise why run vacuum advance? Just my 2 cents. Oh, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. Distributor gears. if you notice on your distributor gear, you have a dimple on one side. Right there. I know you can see it, but I gotta point at it anyway. So there's a dimple right there. This is where the roll pin goes through. And on the other side, there's no dimple. Which way do you put it on the distributor? Well, from the factory, when they put these on, this dimple lines up with the rotor. Rotor here, dimple. Well, you can't see it. I got the collar on there. Dimple there. Now, some distributors don't have a dimple at all. Which I think this distributor, I don't think this one has a dimple. Or you'll see distributors with a dimple that looks like, I'm out of hands again, but sorry, you can see where the roll pin is, but the dimple's not exactly in line. It's off to the side a little bit. Don't ask me why that is. I say that's just Chinesium, so I don't really care. So again, what it is from the factory, it just says, hey, just line this up with the rotor and that will work. This is basically just a fine-tuning aid. Most people aren't aware of that. They think you have to put it on this way, and this way is wrong. Well, they're wrong. There's some cars where there's not very much room to move your distributor. Come over here. So some cars run a lot of crap in here, so they only have maybe this much room. Oh, sorry. So some cars have a lot of crap right up in here, right? So when they're moving their vacuum canister around, they might only have this much room for adjustment. Well, when they're running it, for me, I'm very picky. My distributors have to sit in the engine square. And by square, I mean, it's got to sit like that. Some guys are just fine and happy running around with their distributors off kilter like that. Not me. No, sorry, that doesn't work for me. Although, yes, it's square. But look, come on now. You can't be having that. So if you have your distributor on, the dimple's pointed at the rotor, and you get it all put in and the distributor's off a little bit like that, it's not a big deal. It's going to run just fine. It's just a looks kind of thing. Really bugs the crap out of me. But again, some cars, they might want a few more degrees of timing. Well, they can't move the distributor forward anymore because it's hitting something. You can pull the distributor out, pull the gear off, turn it 180 and stick it back on, then put your distributor in, and you'll find you have some adjustment now. It might move back just a little bit, just enough where you need it. So this particular distributor, that's exactly how it is. It has the bronze gear. So I wasn't happy with the way it was sitting. And if you see, hopefully my light's good enough in here. My finger's certainly getting away, but hey, what are you going to do? If you see where this hole is, right here, lined up with that, turn this over 180, not 195. So if you see this kind of in line with that tooth right there. So it doesn't move your distributor very much, but sometimes it's just enough. You only need to move your distributor a little bit. So again, if you have your distributor put together and this isn't pointing at the rotor, it's like that, don't freak out. It's not that big a deal. It doesn't matter how it looks. It's still going to run fine. But in my mind, I'm a weirdo. My stuff has a lineup just right, or it's just not cool. Well, that's about it. That's all I can think of. So if you have any other questions on this kind of stuff, just let me know. I'll be glad to make another video, or I'll answer your questions on YouTube. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.